What's going on here? Your kid just broke my phone. Oh, he's just playing. That was an old phone anyway. Weren't you due for an upgrade soon?
r/Entitled Parents. Our first story we'll be reading today. Steal from me? Interrupt me while I'm grieving over my recently deceased father? Get cut out of my life. From user Horror Flick Guy. After that, entitled mom tries to get me to date her entitled son. Thought he was alright until this happened. From user Earth16DG. After that, Karen wants balloons blown up that she bought elsewhere. From user Dark. Thank you so much to our authors for letting us read your stories. And if you're an author who would like me to read your stories next, please submit them to the r/Mr. Reddit subreddit. And if you're new, don't forget to subscribe for new stories every single day. Steal from me? Interrupt me while I'm grieving over my recently deceased father? Get cut out of my life. This is a long one. I didn't quite know where to post this because the main person in the story is most certainly an entitled parent, but is also quite entitled herself. There are so many stories I could tell you about this woman. She's a horrible person all around and would sell her own kids up the river if she knew it could get her what she wanted in life. Perennially dissatisfied with what she has and perpetually negative with a stage 4 defeatist attitude. Unless she's playing a role to get someone to do her bidding. I think she qualifies as a horrible person and a choosing beggar. A two-faced, backstabbing, manipulative, lying, drama-starting jerk who plays the victim when anyone dares shut her down or confront her with her deceitfulness. First, some background and anecdotal information to give insight into what this jerk was, and apparently still is, really like. I knew this lady, let's call her Karen, for about 9 years. I was an aspiring writer and met her, a self-proclaimed actress, writer, producer, through my one-time mentor. She claimed to have 20 years' experience in the business, when in reality, the only acting she ever did was like a spoiled 3-year-old trapped in a 40-something woman's body. The only thing she ever wrote, besides a grocery list, was a bad check, and the only thing she ever produced was a bowel movement. But tish! My mentor was assisting me in getting my then one and only script ready to be produced into an indie film. The production was scrapped, mostly due to Karen plagiarizing and trying to steal my work right out from under me. I pulled the plug. I threatened to sue and publicly humiliate her in vengeful retribution if she didn't back off. That whole ordeal, in and of itself, is an entirely different story. You may be happy to know I'm currently revisiting my options with a wonderful new director and his highly skilled production team. Before all of this deception had come to light, I, not knowing her for the narcissistic sociopath that she is, had naively befriended Karen. Visits at her house were tension-filled, as she let her daughter from her first marriage and her entitled brat son, 7 years younger, from her current marriage do whatever they wanted. They both behaved like hellions. Her daughter was 15 by this point and often retreated to her room. Her son was another story. He was a spoiled punk brat, and she never corrected him. She knew her son was a problem. She didn't always give him whatever he wanted, but she rarely told him no and made it stick. In the rare instance she did tell him no, he would throw a tantrum until she finally gave in. In retrospect, I realize he was only emulating what he saw and doing what he knew he could get away with. I really hope he grew up to be a responsible, respectful young man. If my math is correct, he should be 19 now. One particular instance, he grabbed my cell phone. It was an old Samsung flip phone and ran away with it. I can't remember the exact exchange, but I chased after him to get it back. He was laughing the whole time. I demanded it back. Instead of returning it, he threw it. I called him a little jerk and went to check to make sure my phone wasn't damaged. It was cracked slightly on the left side by the flip part. Karen was out of the room and playing oblivious. The exchange went something like this.
What's going on?
Entitled brat just grabbed and threw my phone. Karen's face changed to shock, embarrassment, then relaxed to a flippant expression.
Oh, he was just playing.
I was dumbfounded. Playing? He cracked my phone. Karen, like it's no big deal.
It's an old phone. Aren't you due for an upgrade anyway? Look at mine.
I was fuming as she retrieved her early model of one of the first smartphones. An iPhone, I think. Me, passively aggressively with just the right amount of vitriol. Must be nice having a husband who pays for everything so you don't have to work. You are unemployed, right? Then it was Karen who started fuming. She asked me to leave, which I gladly obliged. A series of phone calls and voicemails followed, with Karen calling me every name in the book. It was a typical cowardly reaction from her, as she always had to have the last word, even when she was wrong. She never had the nerve to say anything to my face. In fact, showing what a cold-hearted jerk she was, I can say with 98% certainty she was the one who outed me to my father. I would stake my life on it. This was back in the day of huge desktop set-up computers, and it was commonplace for everyone to use MSN or Yahoo Messenger. I had bought the whole system myself, and as a result of living at home at the time, everyone used it. Being continually unemployed, she did nothing but surf the web in her bathrobe and chain smoke all day. I would come home to a series of angry, unread messages. Social media really hadn't caught on yet, and I did not have a smartphone of my own. Knowing darn well I had to work, she'd be upset that I didn't immediately respond. It wasn't beneath her to use things I told her in confidence to blackmail me or file them away to use as weapons later on. There were times where I came home and found messages hanging in an unread chat, just sitting there on the screen, waiting for anyone to read them. I knew for a fact she spread a completely untrue rumor about my health. When I found out, I was livid. She learned very quickly not to throw rocks while living in a glass house. I fought fire with fire. Gossip and slander were among Karen's countless loathsome attributes. She talked major smack about everyone to anyone who would listen. The primary victim of her poisonous viper venom was her saint of a husband. She readily admitted she never loved, would cheat on if the opportunity arose, and leave him once she was famous. Eye roll. Cue the pro-revenge. Let's just say I had her saintly but short-tempered husband's cell phone number and might have put it to good use. Hypothetically speaking, a few none too subtle hints about deeply personal marital problems I may or may not have had knowledge of, as well as a suggestion he check her messenger chat logs for evidence of a suspected extramarital affair, would have been more than enough for his fevered imagination to kick into overdrive. It wouldn't have taken much to get going because his first wife cheated on him and left him for someone else. In case you're wondering, no, she never found out that I allegedly tipped him off. Now for the title of my post. It was August 2011. My father was losing his 6-month battle with lung cancer. He had been diagnosed back in February of that year, 2 days after his birthday. It was stage 3B, and there was nothing they could do. The chemo and radiation treatments only prolonged the inevitable. We had just received word that the cancer had metastasized. He now had multiple tumors in his stomach and one in his brain. They gave him 3 months to live. It was a particularly hard time for both me and my mother. She was about to lose her husband of 40 years, and I was about to lose the only father I had ever known. Out of 5 of us, my 17-year-older half-brother, who is a criminal, my invisible 13 years my senior half-sister, who continues to have nothing to do with us because of how my dad used to treat her mom, my 9-year senior brother, who was, at the time, serving a 10-year sentence, my fraternal twin brother, who is in addiction recovery, and me, the normal one, was treated the worst just because I happened to be gay. Cue Karen. She called multiple times daily, wanting to shoot the proverbial BS, knowing darn well I had other things to deal with, and I had already made it clear I had no desire to speak with her. I would remind her that I had a terminally ill parent, and I didn't need her drama being dumped on top of everything else. She wasn't used to anyone standing up to her, least of all me. Now for the ultimate example of Karen-ness. September 8th, 2011 arrives, and my mom gets the call that just before 7 a.m. that my father had passed away. As soon as she left to go to hospice, I called Karen, not for moral support, but to explicitly instruct her not to bug me with her petty drama.
Are you okay?
No. I paused, reflecting how my life had now irreparably changed, as the only father I had ever known was now gone. Any chance of him ever being proud of me, or us being friends, as slim as it was gone forever. Karen immediately started talking about herself. I cut her off. Karen, I don't care. I called to tell you I need some time to myself. Time without you invading my life with tales of woe concerning your broke self, your husband, your kids, or of your self-made pathetic existence. My mom just lost her husband of 40 years, and I need to help her get through this. Relatives are going to be ringing the phone off the hook, and I don't need you adding to it too. Karen went to say something else, and I hung up. After going to the funeral home to arrange for my father's cremation, I spent the day helping Mom out around the house. She, understandably, had gotten into the vodka she had stashed away. This was partially to deal with the loss of her husband, but also to numb the mixture of pain and aggravation of fielding phone calls from her numerous, cantankerous former in-laws. In an attempt to clear my head, I went out by myself. I left my phone at home. Call it a hunch, but I knew Karen would not be able to comply with my no-contact order. I returned home several hours later. Between my cell phone and landline, I kid you not, there were at least a dozen missed calls, all from, you guessed it, Karen. I promptly started deleting all her calls and voicemails without listening to or returning them. I was in the process of changing the voicemail greeting from my father's voice to mine when the phone rang again. It was Karen. I answered, and before I even finished saying hello, she started talking about herself. I snapped. Shut up! What part of my father passed away today don't you understand? What is your malfunction? I hear a gasp then, with the cruelest phrase that could ever be said to a grieving son. Karen responded,
Well, you two never got along anyway.
It was like a baseball bat hit me across my chest. You jerk! I hung up. A series of emails and private messages followed, most likely all failed attempts to defend her cruel retort as something that was said in the heat of the moment. I didn't read them, and I wasn't having it, as she had shown her true colors. Insight to what she thought was so important to repeatedly bug me mere hours after my father's death. Karen was still thinking she was going to be some hotshot actress. According to her, she was the second coming of Meryl Streep. As if. Apparently, she had used her connection through my graphic web designer friend to get his client, a director in New Jersey. In a desperately pathetic attempt to get him to hire her, Karen kept spamming said director with her highly embellished, typo-filled resume and camera phone photo. which she was trying to pass off as a professional headshot. I later found out from my web designer friend the director called Karen a crazy jerk and blocked her. Helpful hint: never lie on your resume. After that, I made sure Karen and I had little to no contact. Once I changed cell phone providers and numbers, I stopped hearing from her altogether. In some ways, I truly wish I could have been a fly on the wall to see her reaction when she realized I had blocked her on all my social media. Tried calling my non-working old cell number, and all her emails came back as undeliverable. Cue evil laughter. I don't feel bad at all for ghosting her, just relieved and liberated. I hope that vile jerk enjoys rotting in her messed up world. Sorry, not sorry. Permission to use this on YouTube is granted. Just please drop the link in the comment section so I can watch the video once it's available. Thank you. Edit. Update. I recently reconnected with my web designer friend. According to him, Karen's spiteful elderly mother-in-law lives with them now. There's lots of bad blood between her and Karen. Mother-in-law had gotten a bad vibe from Karen from the very beginning and has hated her ever since. Their rocky relationship went from toxic to nuclear when Karen trapped mother-in-law's saint of a son into marriage by accidentally getting pregnant with entitled Brad. Well, karma kicked Karen in the butt, and she is now her crabby mother-in-law's nursemaid. Karen's daily routine now includes waiting on mother-in-law hand and foot, and she is lectured on how she ruined her son's life and turned her grandson into a spoiled entitled Brad. Knowing all this, I scratch my head, wondering why Karen's husband never left her. I had always presumed, once entitled Brad went off to college, her saintly husband would serve Karen with divorce papers and beat it out of there. I digress and shrug. Not my problem. Update 2. According to my web designer friend, Karen's daughter is almost 27, married, and has a kid of her own, and her half-brother, the entitled Brad, is almost 20. From what I understand, entitled Brad is in college and wants to cut the cord by going in the military. As I heard it, neither of them maintain contact with their mother. Next we've got entitled Mom tries to get me to date her entitled son. Thought he was all right until this happened. Okay, long-time stalker, second time posting, yada yada. I have recently graduated from high school. Shout out to classes of 2019, and have been working up the nerve to post this. At the beginning of my senior year, my math teacher assigned us partners for tests. What that meant was for the rest of the semester, and possibly school year if anyone was still in his class second semester, we would study with an individual for upcoming tests during class time when assigned. He did this so when a test was coming up and we were given time in class to study, we wouldn't just talk with a group of people instead of using the time to study. Our partners were decided through popsicle sticks that were colored at the end. I picked a light green stick, and my partner was, you guessed it, the entitled kid. The first instinct when I saw him was, pretty boy who relies more on his looks than his brain. I know that's mean, but hey, I do that. Sorry. He was really handsome though. Dark blonde hair that was cutely messed, and hazel eyes. I smiled a bit, and we started to chat. It was the third or fourth day of the start of the school year, so nothing major was happening. I learned his name. I'm still calling him entitled kid. He learned mine, and we discussed numerous topics, ranging from what our dream jobs were. His was to be a CEO, but forgot which company. Mine is to be an artist. What our study habits were like, so that we could negotiate times and techniques to help, and our hobbies. Class ended and we said bye. Over the next few weeks, while we were still in the first month of school, I thought that we were good friends. We started to hang out after school as well, which might have sparked the thought into his head that I wanted to date him. I did like him, but not in the want-to-date kind of way. On Halloween, I decided to dress up as my favorite superhero, Go Raven. And he was a jail escapee. He commented on my costume, and I couldn't help but notice that his gaze landed on my legs. If you know what Raven looks like, in this version I was in, she is basically in a black one-piece with sheer gray stockings. Since our school didn't allow costumes that would be deemed too revealing, I went with black shorts and the stockings. My costume was sort of put together, found desperate prices at thrift stores deal. A while later, and it's now the new year, and some students transferred out and others in. Those who both stayed in from last semester stayed as partners, and newcomers, as well as students whose previous partners entered new classes, were teamed up again. Entitled Kid and I were still in the same class, and for the first time, he invited me over to his house so that we could study together for an upcoming test. It was a tough chapter, and I've been to his house twice before, so I agreed. I arrive on Saturday afternoon, and we begin, staying in the living room. I have a habit of tuning others out when I'm focusing, so I didn't notice right away when he called for my attention. Start of the cast. We've got me, the daughter of Trigon. We've got the Entitled Kid. Entitled Kid.
Hey, OP.
Huh?
I wanted to say for a while now that you're really pretty.
For the first time that I've known him, he looked bashful. I felt my cheeks heat up a bit as I thanked him politely, while wondering where the heck did that come from. This is where the mother comes in. I've met her before and thought she was nice, but a bit proud. She's going to be the entitled mom. Entitled Mom walked by. We said hello, then I didn't know what to do. Thankfully, Entitled Kid spoke up.
I want to be your boyfriend.
I swear my face was hot enough to fry an egg on it. I stutter a bit, then calm down. Entitled Kid, I'm flattered, but I'm not comfortable with, well, starting a relationship. He looked stung and spoke in a matching tone.
With me?
With anyone. He stumped, and honestly, I felt really bad for him. I did care about him and didn't want to hurt him at all, but I really didn't want to start a relationship with anyone. Still don't, actually. We sat there for a moment, and just as I was about to open my mouth to ask if he wanted me to leave, the entitled mom stormed in, full Karen mode.
How dare you!
I jump, as I've never heard her shout, and thought for a second she was on the phone, but she was staring at me. What?
My precious boy has been working up his courage to ask you out, and you reject him? You have some nerve leading him on, then crushing him.
I stammer and feel my face warm up again. I didn't lead him on. This is when Entitled Kid starts to show his real personality. Insert the whining, I want it, mommy, tone that babies use. Entitled Kid. Then what about all those times we went out? I look at him. I thought those were just hangouts. I didn't think that.
You apologize to my son right now, and go out with him.
I turned back to her, and with the most stone-cold expression I could put on with a warm face, bluntly said, No. I start to grab my book and supplies that I brought. An Entitled Kid starts to tantrum, full on. He even shattered the glass that he had with water. Entitled Mom hurried to coddle him and shout at me.
Now look what you've done. You little jerk. You have to go out with him. He won't stop until you do.
That's when I knew that Entitled Kid was spoiled silly. Then he has to learn that I'm not something that he can have. I left, and the next school day asked if I could study alone from now on. When asked why, I said that it was personal. My teacher allowed it, and whenever I saw Entitled Kid approach me, I gave him my best, come near me, and I swear I'll scratch your eyes out. Look, then promptly turned away. And our final story of the day. Karen wants balloons blown up that she bought elsewhere. Hello, Mr. Reddit and the Re-Army. Thanks so much for having my story in your last video. One of the stories in it reminded me of another story from my job. Little bit more background on my job. I'm always put on the tills, so I have to deal with a lot of people and Karens. Anyway, my job does our own balloons that say welcome home and all that. We don't do outside balloons from other shops. Anyway, on to the story. Our cast. We've got me, Ezio Auditor. True fans will get the reference. We've got Manager, funny and doesn't deal with Karen's ish. We've got Entitled Parent, Karen, who can't take no for an answer. On to the story. Yet another late night shift, and I've just come back off my break, kind of sleepy due to not getting much sleep the night prior. Anyway, I get back to my till and doing what every person in retail knows well, and do my usual getting on with customers and having a few conversations with some nice customers. Thank God there are people who are nice to us in retail. And I am just about finished with another customer when the entitled parent cuts in front of everyone, and the minute I looked up and saw the hair and way she dressed, alarm bells were going in my head. Oh no, it can't be really a Karen.
Excuse me? Do you mind blowing up these balloons for me? As I need them urgently. My son's flight is about to get in, and I want to surprise him with these.
Sorry, ma'am. We don't do these balloons, and you just cut in front of everyone else, so I need you to go to the back of the line. Entitled parent, looking like I just said the worst thing in her whole entire life, with a wide mouth.
I want to speak to your manager, now!
Luckily, he was right beside me, helping other people. Manager.
What seems to be the problem here?
He
Looking at me with daggers in her eyes.
wouldn't blow these balloons for me and said nasty things to me. I want him to apologize for being so rude.
Little side note. If you are a jerk to me or my friends in work or outside, I'll be one right back. But today it was a good note, as many people being jerks. Manager.
Really? 'Cause I've been standing next to both of you the whole time, and all he said was we don't do them, and asked you to go to the back of the line as you cut in front of people.
Well then,
She shrieked.
I am not going to deal with this. I'm getting the cops.
Go right ahead. We have footage and several people who would say different from whatever you say to the cops.
Entitled parent walks away in a fit of anger, and while walking away, tries to get me by the window that was in the previous story when I was making coffee for another person who was there, and I just moved to the other side, and she went off screaming and roaring about us being rude to a paying customer. She never bought anything. Sorry if this post is really long, but it was kind of funny to me, because that was my very first encounter with a Karen, and I've been in retail for nearly 3 years. Again, Mr. Reddit, full permission granted, and once again, thanks for reading my story. And congrats to our re-generals of the day, Mikey, Adam Gaming, Erica, and KCCat5. Become tomorrow's re-generals by dropping as many re's as you can in the comments below.